I lived in that apartment building for almost 3 years before the elevator started acting strange. At least, before I noticed it acting strange. It was an old building, late 90s construction, 8 floors, one elevator, no basement level. The kind of place where the lights buzz softly and the walls seem to absorb sound instead of reflecting it. Nothing about it felt haunted, just tired. I worked night shifts at the time. I usually came home around 1:30 or 2 in the morning. By then the building was always quiet. No footsteps, no TVs, no doors opening and closing. Just the elevator and me. At first it was just small things. I would press the button to go up, and the elevator would already be on its way down, even though no one else had called it. I told myself it was normal. Someone on another floor. Someone going out for a smoke. Someone restless like me. Then I started noticing the pattern. It only happened after 2 a.m. One night I stepped into the elevator on the ground floor. The doors closed. I pressed my floor. 6th. Instead of going straight up, the elevator stopped at the 3rd floor. The doors opened. No one was there. The hallway lights were on, but the corridor was completely empty. No footsteps, no door sounds, nothing. I waited a second thinking maybe someone was about to step in. No one did. The doors closed again. That night I didn't think much of it. Old buildings do weird things. Sensors misfire. Buttons stick. But it happened again the next night, and the night after that. Always empty floors. Always between 2 and 3 a.m. Always floors where I knew no one lived anymore. There were at least 2 apartments in that building that had been empty for years. People moved out and never got replaced. Everyone knew which ones they were. No lights, no curtains, no sounds. Dead spaces. The elevators started stopping at those floors more often. Then something else changed. The ride started feeling heavier. This is hard to explain unless you've been in elevators a lot. The sound of the cables changed. The movement felt slower, like the elevator was carrying more weight than it should. One night, after a long shift, I leaned against the wall and felt the floor vibrate more than usual. The motor strained as we went up, but I was alone. No groceries, no bike, no furniture, just me. When I got home, I checked the weight limit sign inside the elevator. It hadn't changed. I started paying attention to the floor indicator. That's when I noticed the number that shouldn't exist. The building had 8 floors, but once, just once, I saw the display flash 9 for less than a second before correcting itself. I stood there staring at the panel like it had blinked at me. The next night, I waited. I stayed in the lobby after work, pretending to check my phone. I watched the elevator indicator above the doors. At 2:17 a.m., it started moving. No one had entered. No doors had opened. The elevator went up, stopped on the 4th floor, opened its doors, closed them, then continued upward. Empty. I got inside. As the doors closed, I felt that same heavy pressure again, like someone had stepped in behind me at the last second. The mirrors showed only me. Halfway between floors, the elevator jolted. Not enough to trigger an alarm, just enough to make my stomach drop. Then it stopped. The indicator didn't show a number. The doors stayed closed. I waited. The air felt different, thicker, warmer, like too many people in a small space. Then I heard it. A faint sound, low and wet. Not breathing. More like something shifting its weight. The elevator started moving again. When the doors finally opened, I wasn't on my floor. I was on the 3rd. The hallway was dark. The lights were off. That had never happened before. I stepped out just enough to look. The corridor smelled wrong. Damp. Old. Like a place that hadn't been aired out in years. The elevator doors started to close on their own. I stepped back inside. When I finally reached my floor, my hands were shaking. The next morning, I asked the building manager if the elevator had been having issues. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me and asked what time I usually came home. When I told him, his face changed. He said the elevator had been serviced multiple times for false calls, that it kept stopping on floors no one had requested. Then he said something I still think about. He said the complaints started years ago, after a man fell down the elevator shaft during a maintenance shutdown. They never found his body. The shaft flooded during heavy rain that year. After that, the elevator started calling itself. I stopped using it at night. I took the stairs. But sometimes when I pass the elevator doors at 2:17 a.m., I can hear it arrive and stop on a floor that doesn't exist.
Someone was in a unit lock.
This happened years before the elevator incident, back when I was still doing ride-alongs with a local police unit as part of a night security contract. I wasn't an officer. I handled cameras, reports, logistics. But a few nights a month, I sat in the passenger seat during overnight patrols, listening, watching, learning how quiet a city really gets after midnight. Police radios are never fully silent. Even when no one is talking, there's always static. Low hiss, short clicks, half words that don't belong to anyone. You get used to it. That night, the radio went quiet. Not muted, not broken, just empty. No static. That alone was unusual. We were parked near the edge of the district, close to an old industrial area that had mostly shut down years ago. Warehouses, empty lots, a few abandoned buildings with broken windows boarded over so long ago the wood had started to rot. It was around 2:40 a.m. when the radio clicked. At first I thought it was interference. A faint sound came through, thin, weak, almost swallowed by the channel. It sounded like a child trying to speak quietly, not crying, not screaming, just talking. The voice was too calm to be an accident. It didn't say words at first, just breath and soft sounds, like someone trying to form sentences but not knowing how. Then it said a number, a street number, clear, precise. The officer beside me didn't react at first. He was used to radio noise, so was I. Then the voice repeated the number. Same tone, same calmness. The officer reached for the radio and asked for confirmation from dispatch. No response. The child's voice came back. This time, it added a street name. It was nearby, very nearby. The officer's posture changed. I could feel it in the way he shifted in his seat. The radio wasn't assigned to a civilian channel, and it definitely wasn't a toy frequency. This was a closed police line. We drove. As we got closer, the voice became clearer. Still no panic, still no fear, just informative. It started describing things: a fence, a broken light, a smell, details you wouldn't know unless you were there. The officer tried calling it in again. Still nothing from dispatch. Then the voice said something that made the car go quiet. It described us. The color of the patrol car, the sound of the engine, the fact that the officer hadn't turned on the lights. Then it said the direction we were approaching from. The radio went silent. We stopped in front of an old fenced-off lot. The gate was chained shut. Behind it was an empty stretch of dirt and cracked concrete. No buildings, no houses, just weeds and darkness. The officer stepped out with his flashlight. I stayed in the car, watching the radio. The channel was still open, no static. Then the voice came back, closer now. It said we were standing in the wrong place, that the entrance was further down. The officer froze. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He slowly turned his head toward the radio like it was breathing. The voice continued. It described a path through the weeds, a spot where the fence dipped, a place where the ground felt soft. The officer came back to the car and got in. He didn't ask me anything. We drove to where the voice said. There was an opening in the fence, just wide enough for someone small to slip through. Beyond it, the ground sloped downward into a shallow pit. Old construction, filled in badly years ago. The officer stopped the car. The radio clicked again. The voice thanked us for coming. That was the first time it sounded like a child. Not just young, scared. It said it had been waiting a long time. Then it said a name. I won't repeat it here. The officer knew it. I could tell by the way his face went pale. He turned off the radio. The silence came back instantly. Later that night, back at the station, I found out why his reaction had been so strong. 20 years earlier, a child with that name had gone missing. Same area, same industrial zone. The case was never solved. The search had stopped after a few weeks. The radio logs from that night showed something impossible. The transmission didn't come from any unit. It didn't come from dispatch. It didn't come from any registered device. The signal source was listed as unknown ground level. The next morning, a small excavation team was sent to the location. They found bones, child-sized, buried shallowly like someone had tried to hide them quickly. The official explanation was that the radio interference somehow picked up old signals. That explanation didn't explain how the voice knew where we were, or why it stopped transmitting the moment the radio was turned off, or why, after that night, officers refused to patrol that area alone. Years later, I asked what happened to the radio from that patrol car. It was taken out of service. Not because it was broken, because every time it was turned on between 2:30 and 3 a.m., a chi. I took the job because it paid well and asked very few questions. Night receptionist. Small private hotel, no bar, no restaurant, just rooms, a front desk, and a lobby that never really felt awake. The manager told me the job was simple. Check-ins ended at midnight. After that, my only responsibility was answering calls, watching the cameras, and logging anything unusual. He said that last part with a half smile. The hotel was old, but not historic. Built sometime in the early 2000s. 3 floors, 1 stairwell, 1 elevator that moved slowly and complained quietly when it did. The first few nights were boring, exactly what I wanted. I sat behind the desk, drank bad coffee, and watched the camera feeds. Lobby, hallways, parking lot, nothing happened. Then one night, just after 3 a.m., the phone rang. That alone wasn't strange. Hotels get late calls. What was strange was the caller ID. It showed one of the room numbers, room 308. I checked the system. Room 308 was empty. No guest, no reservation, no key issued. I answered the phone anyway. There was no voice on the other end, just breathing. Not heavy, not panicked, slow, measured, like someone listening. I waited a few seconds, then hung up and logged it as a misdial. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same room. Again, the room was still listed as vacant. This time when I picked up, the breathing was closer. I could hear something else too. A faint, rhythmic sound, like fabric moving against a mattress. I ended the call without saying anything and pulled up the hallway camera for the 3rd floor. The corridor outside 308 was empty. The lights were on, the carpet was clean. The door to 308 was closed. Nothing moved. At 3:17 a.m., the elevator camera triggered motion. The elevator doors opened on the 3rd floor. No one stepped out. No one stepped in. The doors closed again. Then the elevator went down. Empty. I leaned back in my chair and told myself I was tired. That's what night work does. It turns small things into big ones. At 3:42 a.m., the phone rang again. Room 308. This time there was a sound I hadn't heard before. A whisper. Too low to understand. Too deliberate to be static. I didn't answer. I just watched the cameras. On the 3rd floor hallway feed, the light above room 308 flickered once, then went steady. The door to 308 opened. Slowly. The hallway camera showed the door swinging inward. The room beyond was completely dark. No one came out. The door stayed open for exactly 30 seconds. Then it closed. I checked the log. No keycard access. No manual override. The system said the door had never opened. At 4 a.m., I heard footsteps. Not through the cameras, through the lobby. Soft, slow footsteps on tile. They came from the stairwell. I stood up. The stairwell camera showed nothing, but the sound kept coming. One step, pause, another step. Whoever it was, they were walking carefully, like they didn't want to be heard. I stood behind the desk, heart pounding, staring at the empty lobby. Then the footsteps stopped. The phone rang immediately after. Room 308. I answered without thinking. The breathing was gone. Instead, there was a voice. It didn't sound scared. It didn't sound angry. It sounded tired. It said my name. I hadn't given it to anyone. I hung up so hard the phone slipped in my hand. For the rest of the shift, nothing else happened. No calls, no movement, no sounds. At 7 a.m., the morning staff arrived. I told the manager about the calls, the door, the voice. He listened quietly. Then he asked me something strange. He asked if I had answered the phone. When I said yes, his expression changed. He told me that room 308 had been permanently taken out of service. Years ago, a guest had died there. Heart attack. Alone. He had been on a long business stay and had no family nearby. He wasn't found for 2 days. During that time, the phone in the room had kept calling the front desk, over and over, breathing, sometimes whispering. The staff at the time stopped answering. Eventually, the calls stopped too. They sealed the room and marked it as vacant in the system, but they never removed the phone line. I asked why the elevator stopped there. The manager didn't answer right away. Then he said something I still think about. He said the elevator always stops on the 3rd floor after 3 a.m., even when no one presses the button, because that was the last floor the guest ever reached. I quit that job the same day. A month later, I stayed at another hotel in a different city, different building, different system. At 3:16 a.m., my room phone rang. The caller ID showed my own room number. I didn't answer. Some stories don't end when the truth is found. They end when someone finally stops listening. If you're hearing this right now, thank you for staying until the end. And if you want more real stories like these, the kind that don't rely on jump scares, but stay with you long after the screen goes dark, you can subscribe to the channel. Stay aware tonight and trust what you hear, even when no one else does.